And I think from my travels, I really like to, if I get inspired by the land in which I'm visiting, I like to honour it. So when I wrote The Road to Walpa Gorge, that was from Indigenous Australia, from visiting Uluru. There's, I think I write in the post, it was like, I give thanks to the permission, ask permission from the land, just to use the name. There's nothing musical from there, but the name is like sort of paying homage and like respect to places where I've drawn inspiration from, because a lot of people visit countries and just, they extract and not give back.
Hey there, that's the voice of Timanti, my guest on this episode, and we are going deep on this one, exploring topics such as music as a form of therapy, spirituality, and building on previous conversations about the importance of building a community. But listen, now I've got your attention, can I kindly ask you to follow the podcast for updates on the Instagram handle electric_communion, as well as liking, commenting and sharing with your like-minded mates. Come on guys, it only takes a second and it's really appreciated. And if you need any more persuading, you'll now find that I've upped my game and branched out with this content lark, and I now post regular tracks of the week clips that sees me chatting to producers on the scene about their new releases. So far, I've interviewed artists such as Alichan from Isolate, previous guests Michael MP and James Harcourt, Apstay and Missio, to name but a few. And if you've got a new release coming out that fits the vibe of the music and artists I'm championing on this podcast, then do get in touch. I would especially like to hear from more female producers and get your voice represented within the scene. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also posting archival footage from the bygone days of dance music, which people seem to be enjoying, particularly that Greg Wilson clip that got me a whole legion of new followers, and if you haven't checked it out, please do. The haircut and headphones make it worth it alone. And one last thing, if you're feeling generous and would like to donate to the upkeep of this podcast, then please hit the PayPal link in my Instagram bio, or if you're watching on YouTube, you'll find the link below, as this will help pay for all the associated costs of running this podcast. Right, enough of this promo lark. Let's get into my chat with Timanti. Electric Communion, Conversations in Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Electric Communion podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by London DJ, promoter and producer Timanti. I could actually go on there as there are so many strings to your bow, and we'll get into them later for sure. But yeah, how are you doing, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. And I'm appreciated more the fact that you have had what sounds like a manic weekend. I should say at this point, actually, for a point of reference, that today is Monday, the 17th of March, 2025. Yeah, do you want to start by kind of telling us what you got up to at the weekend?
So I had a release out on Friday, came out on Armada, collaboration with Moat and Josie Moltino. So that was super exciting. And then I ended up playing 2 gigs on Saturday. The first one was at this event called Saunaverse, which is basically at the Hackney Community Baths. They do like a big sauna festival outside. So that was pretty mental, because everyone was like in their bikinis and shorts and it was absolutely freezing. But obviously they were in hot tubs and coming out the sauna, and the sun was shining from my set. So I got like golden hour, which was awesome. So yeah, so I played at the sauna festival for like sunset, which was really fun. And then I went on to the Cause for High's event, Unison, which was awesome. It was just like, I mean, I walked in there like 7 p.m. and High was going back to back with Daniel Avery, and it was just like full on techno, super
Nice.
like intense. I was like, whoa. And then I was playing at 8 p.m. Opening up another room called the Hot House, which was super fun. I couldn't see anything in there. Like, it was so dark and smoky, but it was super fun. So it was nice to see at the end of my set was actually a full room, because I couldn't actually see while I was playing. So that was super fun. Stuck around there, watched a few of my friends play, watch High go back to back with Sherelle and then Michelle Minetti. And then a couple of the homies were playing at Fold. Reculture was taking over. Room 2
Yep.
alongside Laurent Garnier. So we had Reg, Patton, Hard Antoine, and there was a couple
Melton,
of,
Melton
yeah,
Mizar.
yeah, and Julia Karma,
Yep, sure. Yep.
who there, and I mean, it was like, yeah, it was. I mean, I wasn't sure how I was going to stay till the end, and I was like, my legs were like completely done by about 3, and I don't know, I managed to pull through, made it till the last track, and then I drove home at 7 a.m. for the sunrise.
Wow. Sounds like a good night.
It was fun.
Let's go back to kind of the beginning a little bit because you grew up in London, right? Is
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. And you've been DJing and promoting for a long time now, I think. I guess it's a question I always like to start with on the podcast, as it kind of helps myself and the listeners kind of understand the journey of the artist, the journey that you've been on, and how you've got to where you are now in terms of the music you make, the sounds that you champion. So tell me, like, about your first kind of forays into music. Were you into music from a really young age, and kind of what are some of your early memories of what you were listening to back then?
So this is going to sound really random, but I wouldn't even call myself a promoter. I just put on parties because I didn't really feel like my sound fit anywhere. But my actual first ever party was my 16th birthday, randomly. And I remember I hired a DJ for that. And then I was like, I can do that. Well, I couldn't, but I was like, I'm going to learn how to do that. And I had like one lesson, but it was more like, this is what DJing is. Now you do it. And I had no idea what it was, really, to be honest. And I just kind of got left with the records. And then I ended up saving up my money from my like Saturday job and buying some Technics, and then just practicing every day, like for hours, just making loads of mistakes, and then watching friends. I used to do like radio station with my friend. I went to college to do music technology, but at the time, like, it was on Logic 5. Ableton didn't exist. We were using Pro Tools, and like it was mostly like recording bands, to be honest. Like what, and the loads of the guys were doing Fruity Loops. So I started to. I wasn't very good at producing because I had no idea how to do it either. And loads of the guys in the course were like, they'd been doing it for years. So I thought, what's the quickest thing I can learn? And at the time, it was DJing. So I did my 16th birthday and then just started to DJ, like pick it up. But back then, like, it was just so hard for me to get gigs because there was just no one that identified as like anything other than male getting gigs. So they would just sort of like tell you to go away. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to start getting gigs. And then everyone became a DJ and CDJs came out, and then that was it. So that's when I thought, "Do you know what, I better start getting back in the production." So I started trying to make music again. And then when I did a season in Ibiza in 2016. And I literally spent the entire season like driving to every single party just to see like what all the music was, and I was like, where would I play? And I just remember thinking like the only party I could see myself playing at the time was DC10. And I saw Black Coffee and Cooler the Song, and I was like, I didn't even know what Afro House was at the time, but I just was like, yes, this is a bit of me. And so then I came back to London. And I was doing loads of different parties all the time. Like I was doing like parties in the old XOYO, just everywhere really. And I had a series of all sorts of names. And then when I came back after the season, I started an event called Timanti and the Tribe. And then I was like, I don't want it to have my name in it. So I changed it to Tribelife because it was about everyone. It was about the community. So that's why I changed it to Tribelife, because and it wasn't even about the music style. It was about like a tribe looks after each other. And that's kind of where that name came from at the time. And it was actually really funny because before this call, I actually went into my old like archives to see the names of all the artists some of the artists that I've booked, and I wrote some of them down because it's gonna like you're gonna be like, whoa, what the hell, this is mental. But I've had Tisha play for me, Kimmy, Cece, Cameron Jack, Ben from Make a Dance before he was Make a Dance, D Ramirez, Voice Drone, who owns Fold, who started Fold, like Nena Helena, but before when he was his other alter ego. Um, just like Holly Walker performed for Sunny for me, like before she was with Marabou. Craig Durante, who's part of Lost Village. So there's a lot of people that are now really successful, and
Yeah.
obviously I had them playing for me like years ago, and it wasn't even, it was just for fun. Do you know what I mean? Like we just all loved music, and that's what we were doing.
And did you, book these people yourself? Were you doing everything yourself in regards to the promotion?
Yeah,
Were you reaching out to them? Yeah, you didn't have anyone else kind of.
they were my mates.
Yeah.
They still are my mates. That's what I mean. These were like sort of early days of people just on the grassroots levels before they even had like full managers and teams.
And what kind of like music were you playing back then? I mean, obviously electronic music, but kind of before you started playing more, I guess, afro and melodic. Can you
Um,
remember kind of the kind of artists and the tracks you were playing and you were into?
well, around that time I was playing more tech house, like Ricardo Villalobos, and like I actually put up an old mix from literally 9 years ago, and the track listing, I'm just gonna get it up here so I remember. But the track listing from that, um,
What year are we
right,
talking, Timanti?
uh, this was from 2017. So 2017, like the year after I was living in Ibiza for the season, I was playing like the records on this mixtape was from Trauma, Dashan, Pausa, Ejeka, Villalobos, Culo de Song, and the Lauren Garnier remix.
Nice, nice.
So it's very different from, not very different, but as in like it wasn't really much Afro then. The Afro came when my release got put in Afro bracket, which I don't even think it really was an Afro record. It just
Mm,
didn't really sit anywhere else. The When You Wake Up record that got
yep.
released on Aluku. So then that's sort of when I kind of got put more into the Afro techie sort of scene. And I just started to discover, like I went and played in Kenya, and I started to discover South African house music. So I really got into that, and I started playing that a lot. So yeah, like over the years, I've like the first music I actually started playing was garage.
Mm, yeah. And we'll come back to some of your music later in that, but you talked about when you first started out, it was on 1210s, vinyl. Were you kind of a vinyl junkie back then? And where were you kind of going to buy your records? Did you have, a favorite record shop?
So I've still got those 1210s. I'm actually sitting right next to them.
Me
On
too.
a,
I got them probably back. When did I get them? I got some in like 98 or something, and I've still got them. Bomb-proof.
yeah, yeah, never gonna sell those ones. They're with me for life. So like my first records that I actually got were my dad's records. So like loads of records from like the 70s and stuff. And there was a secondhand shop round the corner from where I live, and I just used to go there, and like I had a lot of people that used to be DJs that gave me some of theirs, and I'd sort of just explore everything and whatever sounded good to me. Like I never really had a specific like genre that I wanted to play at the time. I was just loving music, and every time I'd hear something new, I'd be like inspired by it, and just yeah, like play that. But when I started, I guess when I started to get DJ bookings, I started playing hip hop. So so I actually started getting booked to play hip hop. So
Right.
I was buying a lot of hip hop records at the time, and I was going to like HMV and buying like whatever was out at the time before I really got into like electronic dance music. And that was probably, I went to uni for Freshers Week. I basically went to uni for a few months
Right.
because I wanted to do music, and I realized like it was going to be a waste of time. Like I thought I'm not going to spend 3 years in. It was in like outside of London when the main hub of music was in London. So I said to them, "Can I move back home and just travel in for the lectures?" And they said, "Well, if you do that, well, you're going to have to pay for a year of accommodation." So I just dropped out, and
Mm.
I got a job in music promotions. The people that came and did like careers advice at the uni, I actually went to them and said, "Look, I was at uni, but I'm not at uni anymore. Can I still be an intern?" And they were like, "Yeah, okay." And then I ended up working there and learning like all about like promotion and PR. And that's where I really got into electronic music. So I was about 21 then, and about 20, yeah.
Mm.
Um, and that's when I like really like started to, because we were doing remixes of all the records, like from everyone. I think, oh god, I can't even remember like some of the, we promoted like Dead Mouse first release, like yeah, it was crazy. So I was into a lot of different sounds back then. I was just
Mm.
I was absorbing it all.
And I mean, nowadays, I mean, apart from being sent like new music from labels, obviously you've got a lot of friends in the business who will, be sending you promos and that. I mean, how do you discover music in, a digital age?
So sometimes, funny enough, Instagram, like people tag things on Instagram or share stuff. I love Bandcamp. Like I think Bandcamp's like such an amazing way to discover music that you don't necessarily find otherwise. Like, a lot of the stuff on there is not on Beatport and stuff like that. Also, I'm on some like pretty obscure, what's it called, promo lists like in Berlin and stuff. So I get a lot of records from there. Like some of it I would never play it, but I might get like one record that I would have never found or heard of, and then I'll be like, oh wow. And then I'll go on a sort of a like a little
Like little rabbit hole down a rabbit hole
yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
and then just go on like YouTube and try and find other stuff that they've made. And because I think YouTube's a really good place to find stuff that's a bit, again, not really everywhere.
Okay.
People like upload old records, and obviously going out listening to music, I think can be like an amazing place to find music. I mean, one year I got somehow ended up on someone's 40th on a boat in Ibiza, and they wanted me to DJ, and I wasn't really bothered, to be honest, because sometimes I just want to like I don't really get a lot of opportunities just to relax and enjoy time with friends. And so because I'm always DJing, like either in restaurants or I've been doing it my whole life. So for me, like actually in just being somewhere and just chatting to people is really nice.
Mm.
And anyway, this guy turned up, and he actually didn't bring headphones because he'd never didn't DJ anymore, and he turned up with CDs, not even USBs. So he didn't have headphones, and he had CDs. And like when I tell you, this guy was absolutely playing some of the best tunes I've ever heard. Like I was like, mate, you need to give me the list of the tunes because he doesn't DJ anymore. So he actually sent me a photo of all his CDs, but half of them you can't find them.
Mm.
They're really old records, or they're not actually available online. They're vinyl rips. Some of them I couldn't read the names of, but yeah, just stuff like that, really.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, you talked about Instagram. Sometimes you find kind of new music on Instagram. You have kind of introduced me via Instagram to quite a lot of new music. Several of your posts, I've seen you play stuff like at gigs, and I've been there frantically shazamming tunes, that you were playing in the videos. And the one track that really has had a lasting effect on me is "No Time for Tears" by Birds of Mind.
I love
It
that
is
record.
incredible. Absolutely. I couldn't remember the title, so I had to go back and listen to it yesterday in preparation for that. But I've played that many times, and that is a really wicked track. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're welcome. Sometimes I think sometimes people probably have. It was really funny. Like I did my sort of all night long birthday celebration thing recently, and one of my friends come up to me and he was like, "I can't Shazam any tunes from your set." He was like, "You're doing your job properly," and I was like, "Yes," because like most of the tracks that I played that night were like, obviously, if I get them up front from promo lists, like they're not out yet, so a lot of them aren't on Shazam. So I played I think that night I played the new Trick Ravia,
Yep.
and like that was like 3 weeks before release. So yeah, it's just that's kind of like I do like playing some old stuff, but I kind of like just playing stuff that even I haven't heard out. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's more fun and sort of a surprise for me when I play it out. I'm like, oh wow, this sounds amazing, because it sounds so different when you play it in your headphones or in the studio.
Electric Communion, Conversations in You mentioned before that you'd been traveling or you lived in Africa, and
No, I went there for like a trip.
Okay. Oh, but I once read or heard you say you got some Italian heritage, and
Yeah.
I read that you spent time as well as Africa. You've been to Australia. In fact, resident advisor says spent time living in indigenous Australia. So I'm interested to hear more about that, and also Mexico. But yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to get to is, tell me about some of those experiences and the impact that it's had on your side, because certainly the sounds of Africa, are quite a reoccurring theme in lots of your tracks, such as Warrior, Voices of a Sacred Land, Fuana. I love that track, by the way. I played that a lot. I love those vibes. And so did those experiences kind of have an impact on you making music?
Well, Voices of a Sacred Land doesn't really refer to Africa, because actually the voice of that is a monk from Georgia. So he's an Armenian monk, like he's really famous. And my friend went to these like this sacred temple and recorded it and sent it to me and was like, do something with this. And I was like, I really don't feel right releasing this record. So I chopped up his vocal to try and make it sound like unrecognizable. And then I was just like, in my spirit, I was like, I cannot put this out without like his blessing. So I actually reached out to him on Instagram, and he had like 2 million followers. And I thought, he's never going to reply to me. Like, it's just never going to happen. Anyway, he replied to me immediately, and he was like, send me the track. And then I sent him the track, and he was like, it's amazing. I love it. Why didn't you use more of my voice? and I actually think Tale of Us even sampled, not the same thing, but I think they've used his voice in something, because he then sent me videos of Tale of Us playing his voice. And yeah, that was pretty mad. Like, I was just communicating with him. Like, he's such an amazing human being, and like his voice is just like holds so much spirit. And I think from my travels, I really like to, if I get inspired by the land in which I'm visiting, I like to honor it. So when I wrote The Road to Walpa Gorge, that was from Indigenous Australia, from visiting Uluru. And it's like, I think I write in the post, it was like, I give thanks to, like, ask permission from the land just to use the name. There's nothing musical from there, but the name, like, it's like sort of paying homage and like respect to places where I've drawn inspiration from, because a lot of people visit countries and just, they extract and not give back. And I think that's really important. Like, even with, what Damien Lazarus does with Day Zero, it's very integrated into the culture, and he has like the Mayan people coming and doing an opening and a closing ceremony, and I think for me, when I visit places in my travels, I always want to make sure that I'm sort of honoring where the inspiration came from, if there was inspiration from
Sure.
from sacred, especially sacred land.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit then about, well, you talked about spirituality, and I know that that has been something that you've kind of explored a lot, in your life, and also the kind of healing power of music. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and kind of what you found out, and have you been on courses, and how I'm kind of interested as well as how that's helped you, navigate your own life.
So I had to double check this before, because I was going to say we are 90% water, but in fact we're more like 60% water. So obviously our body is 60% water, and there's something called cymatics, which, if you look at the way sound influences water, there's loads of studies that if you sing like beautiful words, even the way, like, the things you say, like, if you speak to water in a really loving way, and then there's like a famous experiment, where if you freeze the water, once it's been spoken to in a really loving way, it will form these beautiful, like, crystals. But if you say really horrible things to the water, it will make really ugly patterns. And I truly believe that's the same with our bodies. And so, like, obviously, if you're always positive and you always speak kind things about people or yourself, then your body's hopefully going to be in good health. And I think also it's like the music you listen to. So, like, when you listen to certain frequencies, sometimes you get like, evokes emotion like anger. So there's like certain music that you listen to, and you'll notice it'll make you, like, sort of like amp you up and make you feel certain things. And I think that's key. And so I actually had like a health scare maybe about 7-8 years ago, and I was diagnosed with like a long-term incurable autoimmune disease. And so it sort of inspired me to sort of heal with alternative, like, I haven't ever said this publicly. I just had a real interest, like, to, like, make my health like top priority, especially in this industry, because if you want to be in this for the long run, you need to be like looking after yourself. And I just was fascinated by the power of sound, and actually went to study with this incredible woman called Elaine Thompson, who I thought sound healing originally was, you know, gongs and bowls. But when I went to train with Elaine, it's just like, it blew my mind. So I originally trained with Cherub and Tim Wheater, with the, like, gongs and the crystal bowls and all of that. And then I went a step further and worked with Elaine Thompson and studied with her about, it's like analysis of your voice and where you were born. We all have like a frequency, like, we're naturally a certain frequency, and like the reason you get on with certain people and don't get on with certain people, or certain people's voices might not like sit with you well, is because they might clash with your frequency, that your birth note.
Mm.
And so basically through the voice you can see a lot of like ailments within a person, even what they're missing, deficient in. And I actually have a sound bed that I can program different frequencies and lie on the sound bed. And yeah, basically I've been working really deeply trying to heal myself through sound.
Mm.
And then last year I went another step further and went to Amsterdam to work with another guy who works with like plasma frequency fields and scalar machines, and that's like a whole nother level of like changing the polarity of your blood. And it's just like mind-blowing stuff. Like,
Sounds it.
yeah, it's like that's probably a whole nother podcast, to be honest.
But how does that then feed into you making music? Because you're really, really conscious. Obviously, you've done all this research, you've done all this kind of learning about sounds that I guess a lot of other producers won't know. I mean, is that really kind of playing at the back of your mind? And
Yeah, so I'm building at the moment like a sort of, I still haven't tested it out, but I'm building something that is gonna hopefully have like healing effects, like, but like not just playing 528 hertz or 432 hertz like through a speaker. It's actually like how to change someone's brainwave state whilst listening to the music. So it's like a complete experiment. Like I'm there's no one that's done it before, and I'm sort of working with my teachers and asking them questions, because obviously they're not DJs either, so they just hear tones and
Mm.
frequencies. So I'm trying to build it so it's actually a healing frequency, but not. You have to be really careful with sound and these kind of things, because someone will be like, oh, I'm gonna put the frequency of ecstasy, let's say, and like you might play that tone and it could trigger something in someone. So
Mm.
you have to be really mindful and careful when you're dealing with this sort of sound. Is like extremely powerful and is a medicine, so it needs to be treated with like the utmost respect.
Mm.
So like I think for me, the way I work at the moment with music is I try and be a pure channel of love and light. And obviously I'm DJing in a space where a lot of the time people are under the influence, so I try and keep myself as clean as possible, so the channel coming through me is pure and it's an expression of love, and that's
Mm.
what I try and put out through the speakers
Mm.
energetically, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So, what is the importance of music in your life?
To me, music is like the only constant that I have that has kept me through like a lot of dark times, and it's always been there, like when sometimes no one else has been. So I literally love music. It's a life raft for me. So I can imagine a lot of people share that same sentiment. So yeah, it's such an incredible, powerful tool,
Mm.
um, that I use daily.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, I could not, go without music in my life. Every minute of the day, if I can, I'm listening to music on my ride to work, which is pretty dangerous, really. But I have to have music on, when I've kind of got a free moment at work, got music on. Yeah, it's always been there, and it's kind of it sees you through kind of good times, but it also sees you through kind of more challenging times in your life as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely like a soundtrack to your life.
Electric Communion, Conversations in Clubhouse. Well, let's talk about like the dance floor, and we talked a bit about Tribelife, but I'd like to get a little bit more into it, and certainly that kind of whole thing about community building, which I know is a huge kind of part of what you do. I was just actually listening. We talked a bit, first of all, about community with, Gus, who, I know you're friends with in the podcast we did a while ago. And actually, I was listening to a really interesting podcast the other day. It's with Manpower, who I've got a lot of time for. And he was talking about there's so much more to clubbing than the relationship between, the punter and the DJ. And often, like, we remember good nights for the times that actually we've had, not with about the experience we had with the DJ, although of course that has big influence as well, but with our mates, the connections that we make with strangers on the dance floor, while having a smoke, or, being even in the queue, some of these can be life changing. In fact, my friends and previous guests, Monica, they told a really funny story about how they both met whilst in the toilet at a pan pot gig, and I guess the rest is history. And actually, you said in a very recent post, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, you said it blows my mind how many people come solo and leave with new friends. So I guess, can you tell me more about this, how all these kind of community projects that you got involved with to do with clubbing, and I guess maybe some of them are not to do with clubbing really, but talk to me about them, and yeah, what kind of things are you involved in?
So for me, mainly it was because I wanted something more than just the music for myself. Like when I go out, because like predominantly, like I'm a very deep thinker and I like to connect with people on a really deep level. And so I wanted people to come to my events and like sort of expand their minds. And so I actually started doing talks before the parties when I used to do the Matt Grow, and we had like, I mean, even another event I had like some shamans come in to do drumming, had Greenpeace come in to do a talk, and then another one I had this guy from called Wet Sounds who plays like sounds in a swimming pool, and like this other guy who was talking about healing the body through fasting. And I'm talking, this was like over 10 years ago. So at the time, it was like people were sort of a bit like, what the hell? Like, this is so weird. But I've always been a bit weird and a bit different, I guess. Like, I've always felt like a little bit outside, mainly because I think the stuff I've always been into has always not really been that like popular at the time. And then it becomes more popular later down the line, but obviously at the time you sort of feel a bit isolated. So I started to put on these things, and people would start to think a bit more consciously before they started to party, and then they'd connect with each other. And so before the parties even started, if they didn't know each other, they're already friends, so it feels like a house party. And
Nice.
that's kind of the whole sort of space I want to be. Like, I want to go when I'm out. I want to feel like I'm welcome in a space, and that even if I go by myself, I'm going to feel safe enough to still be there. Because a lot of people, especially when they get older, people have kids or don't go out as much, so there a lot of people might be single and want to go out but don't have anyone to go with. So it was really important for me to sort of have that space for people to explore that. And then also I wanted to expand it off the dance floor. And sauna saved my life like a couple of winters ago, and I just literally fell in love with it. It like kept me sane through a winter, and I just really wanted to bring it to the community. So
Hmm.
I came up with this idea with my friend, Mine Like Water, of doing a singing circle. So we would come together and like sing and share like vulnerabilities and like how we were feeling, and like a lot of people shared really intimate stuff, and then at the end of it they would go out feeling lighter. So it was almost like therapy.
Hmm.
um and then we had like a traditional German ritual called Aufguss, which is like a infusion of essential oils, and you wave the towel around the room and it makes the space really hot. And I actually ended up training in that as well. so I could do it for my sauna circles, because my original sauna master, went to New Zealand. And like, I was talking to my friend the other day, I was just like, it's so mad that I never would have thought I'd be doing sauna events, and it would be such a huge part of my life. Like, it wasn't even in my vision. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know it existed. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life, is like, often the times the roads you end up on are the roads that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah. And this is what I was alluding to at the beginning when I said about you having like kind of lots of plate spinning, lots of strings to your bow. Because I'd read stuff about you kind of going down these kind of different paths and doing some of these things. So the sauna stuff, you talked about being part of the sauna verse or at the weekend. Was that something that you had organised then?
No, so I was just DJing for them.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like, I'm now going to be collaborating with good friends of mine that run like queer retreats called People Like Us, and we're going to do a sober ecstatic dance, which is basically, if anyone that's listening doesn't know what that is, it's you don't talk on the dance floor. There's no phones, and it's just basically you get lost in the music,
Sounds
and
good.
it's like almost like dance meditation. And we're going to do one of those, and then I'm going to build like ambient sets for their sort of Friday nights, breathwork, yoga, and sauna with like this sort of ambient sound healing stuff. So it's just like, I'm not planning to do these
Mm,
things. It's just sort of, this is just the way, I just follow my heart and
mm,
do things that make me feel alive,
mm.
because it feeds into the other stuff and balances it out for me.
Getting lost on the dance floor and no phones, that sounds like clubbing about
Yeah,
20 years ago, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Um, Now, you talked about doing these talks before your Tribe Live events, and I listened to some of the podcasts you did back during COVID, and you did one with your friend Charlotte Archer,
yeah.
who I think was living in Ibiza at the time, was still living there now. She was an artist. Yeah, how did they come about? Was that on the back of doing these talks at Tribe Life, and because of lockdown, there was nothing else kind of to do at the time? Is that how they came about?
Yeah, it was pretty much that. Like, obviously, I couldn't do the talks at the event, so I thought I'd do them online. And I wanted to continue them. I just, you know how it is. I
Mm,
think sometimes I have a lot of ambitions, and then spinning too many plates. And like,
mm,
this year, I am trying to like sort of hone in on more the music and not get so lost down all the down all the other paths, because
mm.
it's a lot of
Uh,
distractions.
I bet, yeah. And on the subject of kind of community and just inclusion, I saw a post you made not long ago where you were reaching out to members of the UK LGBTQ community, asking them to get in touch if they were looking for DJ ops and played similar genres of dance music to you.
Yeah.
And in your own words, you said, I've got some exciting opportunities this year and we'll be pushing to bring forward talent, as I know how hard it is to get opportunities. And I want to help those who, aren't getting those opportunities. In your opinion, is there still a big issue within the dance industry in regards to, diversity and equality of artists? And, how much have you suffered, as someone who identifies non-binary because of it? Do you think this part of the clubbing community is still very much marginalized?
It's a big question,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but in my sort of experience of DJing, obviously I've had it twice, let's say, because like the first part of my DJ career, obviously I identified in a different way, and there was no one other than men DJing, so it was like, no, we don't want you. And then when women were like being championed, I was like, great. When my demographic finally hits the main stage, I don't feel that way. And I feel like I'm this other thing now, and I don't identify with necessarily a gender. So then I'm like, fall into this a new sort of bracket that I'm constantly being misgendered, like constantly, like, and like, yeah, it's well, I don't really want to go into that too much on here, but because that's another podcast. But obviously within the music that I play, there's not that many, well, that I've seen. There are, but there's not a huge amount of people from like the queer community that are playing this, like in the parties that I play anyway. So I just wanted for my party to support people that are sort of marginalized more, because I just don't think there's as many opportunities for that sort of in within the sounds, like the whole spectrum of sounds that I play.
And on the back of that post, have you got a lot of people kind of get in touch with you?
I had a few. I had quite a few, but a lot of them again, it was still not quite the right sound. Um, it was still sort of really fast BPMs and like super fast, like techno-y stuff. So yeah, search continues, but I'm always like open to meeting new people and getting stuff. So it's also like I'd like to support, up and coming producers as well that I
Sure.
want that are actually putting out music.
And you've done some work around this, haven't you? Correct me if I'm wrong, but with Jaguar from Radio 1 and
Yeah.
her Jaguar Foundation, because I know she's championed your music a lot on her shows. And
Yeah.
for listeners who aren't familiar with Jaguar and her foundation, can you kind of explain a little bit about that rationale behind the foundation and the involvement you've had?
So Jag's amazing and just always like trying to like push for more diversity, and like she actually made this thing called a safety rider and a diversity rider. And it's something that I really, when I play gigs now as well, like I always want to make sure there's someone on the lineup that's either queer or someone that's not just a man.
Yeah, so for the purpose of listeners who might not, so like a rider is, the thing that you give, isn't it, to promote and say, these are the things that I want, when I DJ at your gig. So like, people talk about what drinks they want, don't they, and what kind of setup they want. So you're also saying about people from different, groups represented on the lineup, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's easier said than done, because obviously, like, sometimes I am the representation on the lineup. But if it's a big lineup and it's like I'm the only person that's not like a cis male, like I do feel quite like uncomfortable. So it's something that obviously with my events I have control over. So Jag's like been pushing, like, if you want to read more about it, I'd suggest going to the Jaguar Foundation, because obviously there's like the reports are on there, and like her work's just, yeah, it's amazing what she's achieved and what she's constantly like pushing for. So massive respect to Jag.
And do you find on the whole promoters are a lot more in tune and more responsive to those kind of initiative now? Like, for example, the diversity rider?
Mm, not really. I mean, some people say they are, but I still see so many lineups where it's literally just like there might be one female on the lineup, or one person that's not a cis male, literally. Or sometimes there's not, like, I've even seen people where it's just full, and like even just white men on the lineups, like, which is like, there's so many talented artists of all types of people, and I think it's so important to have representation, because you're gonna open up your crowd massively if your lineups are more diverse, because people want to go and see like people that look like them or that they can relate to up there,
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And besides kind of that representation thing, I mean, what's your just general assessment of, the dance music industry at the moment? Are there Because there's a lot, there's a lot of people mourning about lots of things, or no, or we're seeing lots of kind of clubs close down, especially smaller clubs for financial reasons or whatever. A lot of talk about kind of becoming too commercialized, bones on the dance floor, all that kind of stuff. I mean, is there reasons to be hopeful?
I think for me personally, I mean, also, I feel like these types of questions they're very subjective to the individual who's being asked.
Yep.
Like, also, I'm a lot older than, probably the average clubber that goes out.
Mm,
So I don't really know what their experience is. Also,
mm,
I see a very different side of the industry because I'm a lot behind the scenes and not really always, and I don't drink,
mm.
so I'm kind of like a very specific type of, uh, you know, from my personal experience, I'm witnessing a lot of people changing. Like they don't really want to abuse their bodies as much. Not as many people want to stay out as late. Like there's there seems to be a huge rise in the wanting for day parties and
Absolutely.
things that finish pre 12. I did
Yep.
my all night long recently, and like silly me put myself at the end thinking that thinking that that's what people would say, and like
Yeah.
most of my mates, my friends, not like the people that come to the events that I'm not that close with, but like a lot of my like really close friends, they all left at like 1.
Oh
And
no.
how they were like, "We're going to bed. Why are you on so late?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." So when someone puts me on a warm up, I'm like, "Do you know what? That's fine for me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
my friends will be happy."
Mm,
So I just feel like there's a big shift. There's a big shift happening. Like I think there's a lot of it. Like I've wanted to. I've actually like hit up a few clubs about doing like sober events in the daytime because I think it's a big people love music.
mm.
People love music, but they also, I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they love their bodies and
Yeah.
they only have one, and once you've ruined it, it's really hard to revert. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I've been to like the last few parties I've been to are daytime ones, the one that or certainly finished before like midnight, the one talked about the other week with Fade that was forward till 10, I think,
yeah,
at Phonox. And then I saw Sasha maybe a month ago in Brighton, and that was, I think, 6 till 11. So, as a 48-year-old
perfect.
male, I'm loving this, man. I'm loving this. I can I can get to bed at a decent time. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because even
So,
if like even if you do still drink, like it's the sleep that gets you.
mm,
It's the lack of like sleep. Sleep is so important. Like it's so important, and I don't think like people realize because like if you don't sleep, your brain doesn't have the time to like get rid. Like when you sleep, your brain gets rid of all the rubbish that you've sort of processed throughout the day. And if you don't have that, you're then compounding more stuff like that you're taking on from the next day and the next day. So it's like having a hard drive on a computer and never
mm.
emptying, like putting everything in the trash but never emptying it.
Electric Communion Conversations in Clubhouse. You mentioned Ibiza before, and I know that you've got a really strong connection with Ibiza. Talk about with me if you can that connection, and when was it that you first went? And because I've actually never, as much as I've deeply been into electronic music all my life, I've never ever been to Ibiza apart from a holiday with my family when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. And for me, I don't know. I think maybe I kind of was always put off because I thought it was like just too busy, too commercial, and I just always remember all these stories about how expensive it was in clubs, like, you know, 15 quid for a bottle of water 10 years ago. And I think for me, that put me off. But I know so many people like yourself have got so many good stories. I was listening to a podcast with Carrie,
Ah,
and she lives there, doesn't she? And
yeah.
and she talked in depth about her love for it, and actually she's talked about it being a very spiritual place. That's the other side of the island that people don't really realize. Is that kind of part of the fact that you're in love with it?
Yeah, it's been a super healing and like magical place for me, like for the last 15 odd years now, or maybe longer. I think the first time I went there was like on holiday with like my schoolmates, and we didn't even we went to the strip, like the sort of the strip where everyone, you know, 10 shots for
Yeah.
I don't know,
I can
maybe not
imagine.
that many, about 5 shots for £10 or something.
Probably 10.
Yeah, and then the following year, or maybe it was the last night, we went to a club, or the following year I went to a club and I was like, oh my God, like what the hell was I doing? I thought that was Ibiza, that the strip. The first time I went, that's what I thought Ibiza was. I had no idea about the super clubs. And then like I discovered them the following year and it just blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But this was obviously back when, you know, the clubs were sort of outside, like you had space, like it was just, the music was loud, like the Zoo Project was popping off every week. The music was super loud. Like now the music outside is really quiet, and you know all the super clubs are like VIP, so it has changed
Mm.
massively. But there is an amazing spiritual side to the island, like just things that you think about happen there. Like it's actually quite scary, not scary, but like you got to be careful what you wish for, because pretty much within minutes it can be there. And like yeah, I've just connected with so many like amazing people that are still like, that's how I met Charlotte Archer. Like we met at Esvedra, we slept there like camping, and like we spoke about plant medicines and all of these like amazing deep spiritual things. And it was just like, yeah, a lot of friends I found a lot of friends out there, and
Mm.
you know I owe that island a lot.
It's funny that you mentioned Charlotte because actually I wrote this down in that podcast with her. You said you talked about going on a camping trip with her where you were worried everyone was going to get high on drugs, but instead everyone was meditating. Was that kind of your first introduction to like spirituality?
No, that was like, I was already like pretty deep down that route, but basically I'm really, I live very spontaneously. Like my life is, if someone's like come to Burning Man with 12 hours notice, you'll probably catch me on the plane, because that's what I actually did that. Like I actually went to Burning Man with 12 hours notice, which was mental. But this particular night, some people that I'd met once, I didn't even know them that well, and they were like, we're camping at Asvedra, come. And I said to my friend, do you want to come with me? And she said, oh no. So I went on my own. I literally drove into the middle of nowhere. It was pitch black. Didn't know where I was going. Never been to Esvedra before, or like this I had, but not this particular place where we were camping. And like just literally walked in the pitch black and found these people there. And I thought, you know, I thought everyone was going to be having a wild night, and they were literally talking about the universe and like playing meditation music, and yeah, it was epic. And one of those people was Charlotte. So that's how we
Okay.
met.
Nice. Yeah. Let's finish off by talking about the music you make, and it's really funny because literally about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, I saw you do a post on Instagram of you in the studio, and you wrote, "People ask me what's my process. My process is no process. I just play and see what happens. Usually, I have no idea what's going to happen." So there goes a lot of questions I was going to ask you, really. But yeah, I mean, are you someone who spends a lot of time kind of holed up in the studio, or wherever you make your music, kind of waiting for something to happen, some kind of moment of inspiration, or is it more ad hoc?
Yeah, I think there's been moments in my life where I've tried to do that, but I've noticed there's been periods of my life where it's like when a big life events happen, or like when I've lived a lot of life, or I've had an experience, that's when my inspiration comes, and then the music comes out. But when I've just haven't done much in my life, or nothing's really shifting, or I haven't had an amazing, haven't been to something inspirational, I really struggle. Like, I'll just sit at the computer and just make stuff that I just think's, I'm like, what is this? And I just throw it in the bin. So I basically realised that I can only make music when I feel inspired to. And it's more of a play, like creative process. And then basically the idea comes out within an hour or two. And then I'll listen to that in, a few days' time, weeks' time, maybe a month's time. And if I still like it, then I'll go and actually finish it.
And is that what happened to you today? Because that's what you were asking on that post, weren't you? You kind of said, I think you said something about being inspired. You did a little rough copy of something, and you were asking people for feedback. And is this something that I should pursue?
Yeah, and I do that a lot. And if quite a few people say yeah, carry on, then I think, okay, cool, I'll listen to that one and see how we go.
Yeah. And you've been involved in quite a lot of collaborations, haven't you, including your most recent release, which we'll get to in a minute. For example, your track Rare, that was with producer Angelus. Other Side with Just Her. I mean, how do these come about? Are you someone who likes to make music in collaboration with other people?
I love it, yeah, but those particular records actually came about with they were sort of like records that I'd made, and then I'd sent to them, and then Angelos loved it, and with Rare, he loved that record, and he then wanted to put his sort of stomp on it as well, which I loved as well, and that was amazing. And the one with Just Her was I actually wanted to work with her for her vocals, because she's got an amazing voice, and I had no idea until I heard it on one of her records. And I said to her, well, can you sing something for me on this? And she actually was really busy at the time, and she sent me some acapellas, and I literally I played my track with the acapella on top, and it was all a bit out of time, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, and it's in the right key. I was like, please, can you send me that? And then that's how that one came about. It was really it was almost like she'd written that and I'd written that in completely different spaces, but they just worked. And it was like we weren't in the studio together. So both those collaborations happened sort of as an after thing. And same with the Moat record as well. So
well, tell us about that track, because that's the track the track you're referring to is your new track called Prime, which came out literally a few days ago on Friday. Tell us about that track and the collaboration. How did that come about?
So again, that was a record that I had that I originally had another vocal on it, and then I sent it to the guys, and they were like, "Oh, this is wicked, we love it." And then obviously they put their stomp on it and got Josie involved, who's an incredible singer based out in Tenerife. And then that's sort of how that one came about. So I'm always open to collaborating, because for me, life is about sharing. Is about being together. If it's just you by yourself, there's no one to bounce off. So I'm always down to collaborate with people, and hopefully we'll be doing more collaborations going forward. I'd like to actually get in the studio with people more, because it's way more fun like that. I have actually been collaborating with a really good friend of mine who's another incredible artist called Tom Diesel. So I've been working with him quite a lot recently, and we've been making some cool stuff. So
nice, yeah. And you played your track Prime on Saturday night. It looked, from what I could see on a post you made, looked like there was a good reaction to it.
Yeah, it was good. It was good fun.
Nice.
It's just a kind of a different. It's a bit different.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's have a little listen to a snippet of that track Prime right now. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of the podcast. So what is next for Timanti? I see you've got some festivals booked for the summer. What about future releases, Tribelife events? This is your chance on the podcast to, really big yourself up, and you do definitely deserve it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for having me and for actually wanting to hear some of my journey, I guess.
That's a pleasure.
It means a lot because sometimes I just think I'm, alone in my room and no one knows what I'm doing. And then people are like, yeah. And it's always really humbling and beautiful to know that sometimes your music actually touches people because you don't know unless people tell you.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I've been a big fan of your music, and like I said, tracks like Fana I've played out a lot myself when I
Thank you.
DJ'd. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, what have you got? What have you got coming up then?
So, rumor has it I might be creating my own record label. So, I actually had one in the past, but yeah, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. So I'm gonna try again, and then next Tribelife event is gonna be in a sick club. I don't want to say what it is yet, but 13th of September is in that club. So put in your diaries. And then I'm looking forward to going to Albania for Unum Festival, which is going to be sick. That's a really cool festival. We've got Villa Lobos, Dixon, Damien Lazarus, loads of people. And then the following weekend I'll be in Albania for Explorations, which will be amazing. Can't wait for that. And then I think I've got a few other festivals, including Highlights Festival, Toft Manor. Supposed to be going to the Philippines and Bali soon. So just organising the last bits for that. And yeah, musically, hoping my next release will be on my label around June, if I can sort it out in time. And then, yeah, just there's so many things in the pipeline I can't actually think off the top of my head.
But is it hard to set up a label? I've always wondered.
I don't think it is, but it's more like getting the distribution, like a good distribution deal.
Mm. So is that still in the process at the moment?
Yeah, I'm just chatting to a few people about what's the best, what they use and stuff like that.
Okay, right. One last question then. I always end with putting you on the spot because you're going to have to remember this. But how can listeners who might not be familiar with you until now, but want to find out more and get future updates about you, how can they follow you? So what are your socials, etc.?
So I use Instagram mostly, which is my Instagram's Timanti __, I think.
It is.
I'm actually sure.
I wrote it down because in the past I've had artists I can't remember, so I wrote it down. It is Timanti __.
Thank you. And then I think my SoundCloud is Timanti Music, and I also have a WhatsApp group for Tribelife events, which I put my gigs in there, and some of them are on RA as well. Yeah, but
how can people sign up to the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, through Instagram. Right. All the links are in. I've got a big, one of those
in the bio kind of thing.
With links to all my gigs and mailing lists, and I don't really send out that many emails. Maybe one a year.
I'm sure people will appreciate that, to be honest. Cool. All right. Well, amazing. Listen, thanks so much for talking to me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I reckon that lots of people like myself, lots of listeners will find what you're doing within the scene really inspirational and, well, not just, I guess, within the scene, but, for lots of people in general. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what comes next for you, and hopefully I will get to that Tribelife event in September. And yeah, I wish you all the luck. Thanks very much, Timanti.
Thank you so much for having me, and everyone for listening. I appreciate that, and yeah, big love.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be here, so yeah.
Electric Communion, conversations in Wow, big thanks to Timanti. That was such an honest and insightful conversation, and I'm going to be exploring some of what they discussed in more depth. If you also want to dig a little deeper, then check out the accompanying links to this podcast, where you can find out more about stuff such as the Tribelife events and the podcast Timanti did during lockdown, the Jaguar Foundation, and all the links to their socials and SoundCloud. And for future updates about this podcast, don't forget to follow the Instagram account electric_communion. And if you haven't listened to previous episodes, then you can do so via the links in the bio, and you can find the episodes on your platform of choice, including my SoundCloud and YouTube page. You can also check out my Spotify page, which has a selection of work from all the artists who've appeared on the show. It's always great to hear feedback about the show, so please do get in touch. If there's any burning issue that I've not discussed that you think I should be talking about the show, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you think you've got something to bring to the show as a guest, or you have any suggestions about who you'd like to hear on the show, I'd love to hear from you as well. Finally, if you dig the show, then please do support by liking, commenting, and sharing to get those algorithms burning on all cylinders so that more listeners can join the communion. Your support is really appreciated, and until the next episode, guys, keep on dancing. Electric Communion, conversations in